I'm Eric Barnes with the Daily Memphian, and welcome to The Sidebar, a weekly show on the community, arts, culture, and more. Today, we're very pleased to be talking to Karen Carrier, a beauty shop, another roadside attraction, other food restaurants and efforts in Memphis, and also a graduate of Memphis College of Art. So stay with us for a conversation with Karen. Karen, thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me.
We'll talk about restaurants and food and your work as a food artist and your kind of all the history you have here and present you have here in Memphis with food. But you're also, many people probably may not know, you're a graduate of the College of Art. And
yes.
Which has there's a big exhibit at the Brooks right now, the Memphis College of Art 1936 to 2020, an enduring legacy. And as part of that, you're doing some dinners. So talk about that.
I'm doing 3 dinners, basically based on the history. Brooks had a great idea. They wanted to do 3 dinners based on the beginning of the Art Academy, the middle during the Ted Rust era, and then, of course, the last, sadly, the bittersweet years that made it go away, which was very bittersweet. The great exhibit, but it was bittersweet for a lot of us because we wish it was still there.
We had Maria Piccini or Pacini. Her brother pronounced it one way and she pronounced it. She's the curator of the exhibit. People can go back into the archives of previous episodes of The Sidebar and get that. It was really interesting. And as sad as the end of MCA is, at least this is happening.
Absolutely. And, I think it was a really hard task for her because she had so many artists to choose from, 90 out of thousands and thousands. And but it's an incredible exhibit. Incredible.
Yeah. And part of her theory and her sort of, not premise, but how she said she could make sense of all this wealth of opportunities and people and so on was to focus on mentorship. And that was part, we were talking a little bit before we started recording about your mentor when you were there. But even before you get to your mentor, because people are so used to you, food, beauty shop, another roadside, all that, Molly's, when were you there? Give us your history.
So I started in 1971 and graduated in 75. And then I ended up staying here for a few years I went to Nashville, and taught art to 700 fourth graders through a Tennessee Arts Commission grant, and then went and did my master's at Hunter in New York City. But my time at the Art Academy, it was the 70s. It was amazing. I was a painting major and an enameling major. I had a double major. And that's where I met Dorothy Sturm, who was this awesome, crazy, amazing presence of a woman. She's from Memphis originally, been in New York during the Depression era, and ended up with the Betty Parsons Gallery, showing with Rothko, de Kooning, Pollock. So her history was just rich. And she also studied at Columbia and studied the human morphology of blood cells and actually looked through a microscope, painted all those blood cells, and it's been used in 8 different languages throughout the world and still is being used today. She was a prolific artist. It was amazing. But those years at the Art Academy were probably, I hate to say some of the best years from the Academy, but a lot of great artists came out of there that are still to this day. James Little was just in the Whitney Biennial last year. And there's so many people I can name. But, we all left there with a strong gut in our feeling of going to New York City and making it as a painter. And it was just an amazing time. We would be up on the 3rd floor of the Art Academy watching Leon Russell at the Shell or, sitting up there doing stuff we shouldn't have been doing, but watching these great shows. And think about the 70s in Memphis. It was really alive. There was great music. The Art Academy was just booming and, Calicut. Burton Calicut, Vita Reed, Dorothy Sturm, Dolph Smith. These were all the professors that we all studied under. I mean, how great of a time was that?
And tell me again, were you from New York or from Memphis?
No, I'm from Memphis.
You are from Memphis?
Oh, yeah. I went to White Station, went to the Art Academy.
That's right. And so you were up in New York in the 70s.
I was up in New York in the 80s. All of the 80s.
All of the 80s.
Okay. Came back after that.
Yeah.
Had to go to New York to meet a guy from Memphis to get married. Very bizarre.
Yeah. Well,
but, things happen on the streets there.
Yeah.
But, it's funny. What happened in New York was interesting and which led me into the food world. I had a friend who worked for Martha Stewart, and she was from Humboldt, Tennessee. She ran her catering business. And basically, she said, Karen, if you go to this cooking school, I'll get you a job when you get out before you start graduate school as a painter. And at Hunter. And I was like, okay. And so the last night of cooking school, I was in this bathroom, this woman was smoking a joint. I kicked the stall door in. It was
we'll take that part out. We can't have that.
Oh, damn it.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Anyway, I met her and she said, I'm in need of preppers. And I said, I'm in need of money because the scholarship didn't afford me enough to really live in New York.
Sure.
And so I went to work for her the next day. I had a semester. I started graduate school in January of 81. And so basically I went to work for her, went to graduate school. 6 months later, she came to me. She goes, we're going to open some restaurants. I dropped out.
Yeah.
And the rest is history.
Yeah. So New York in the, I guess, early 80s.
It was amazing. It was amazing.
I lived there 90 to 95.
Yeah.
And
you had a messed up mayor.
Yes.
Wasn't Dinkins there when you were there?
It was Dinkins, right? It was pre-Giuliani. Yeah. And so Giuliani before he was whatever Giuliani is now.
Right.
And I tell people about being in New York up there, for me in the early 90s, and I visited in the 80s, but living there for 5 years, Manhattan particularly, and definitely parts of Brooklyn and so on, it's so different now. I mean, it's wonderful. New York is always wonderful.
It's changed a lot.
But you would walk up the Upper West Side and go, we're going to take a left for a couple blocks, and then we're going to go maybe south for a second, and then we're going to come back around, and then we're going to go north. Things you really don't consider about that city anymore. And I imagine the 80s also. It was a rougher place.
Yeah, well, the 70s was rough, and things were tough.
Very tough.
And Koch came in, and it was just phenomenal.
You were there for Koch. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Ed Koch.
And it was great. And with Susanna, the great thing was, the graduate school was great, but with Susanna, we opened up the Nile wing of the Met for the Zackler family. We catered, what's his name's? Calvin Klein's 50th birthday party where he was flown in the Hamptons.
Party. Very, very calm,
flown
very simple.
in the middle of a field.
Yeah.
We were on the road with the Clash. We did the Hells Angels 3rd Street parties every summer where the women would hiss at us, but the guys were okay. We had some it was wild.
Yeah.
We had the best time, and I really got to see New York. I would do breakfast in bed for the head of General Electric on Fifth Avenue for 2 people, in their bedroom. And so it was amazing. The art was amazing. There was so much, if you think about it, there were so many great artists that came out of that era, the German Expressionist and all this stuff. So there was so many great things going on. The music was incredible. And, then I opened Automatic Slims in 1986 during the night of the bicentennial.
Yeah.
And so it was a wild time. Let me tell you.
The first Automatic Slims was in New York?
It still is. I still own it.
Yeah. Oh, you do still own that one. Why did I think you didn't?
Yeah, most people don't know that. Yeah, we've been open a long time. It's the corner of Bank and Washington. And, back then it was just the West Village, basically.
Yeah.
And, but Susanna and I started up, and we opened up the Bon Ton Relais in Tribeca. Before it was Tribeca, we had Rick's 181 Lounge, which was owned by the Empire Diner guys. It was the craziest time. I remember the New York Magazine called and said, look, and we're doing an article about tamales. You're going to be on the cover, this magazine. Are y'all ready? We're like, ready for what? And they were like, just get ready. And the day the magazine came out, somebody said, Karen, because the kitchen was in the basement, they said, you need to come up here. And Susanna ran upstairs, and they're all, down 8th Avenue with magazines under their arm, just waiting to get in. I'm like, what the heck?
Yeah.
And so I run out to the corner where all the Puerto Rican guys used to sell joints. And I was like, Victor, you got to come bring some guys. You got to help me roll tamales. He said, we don't know how to roll tamales. I said, dude, you roll joints. You can roll a tamale. They come. He's
been training his whole life and he didn't know.
Go into the basement. We set up like milk crates, and then we rolled tamales, and they just, we couldn't roll them fast enough. But that was the kind of stuff that was happening to us constantly. It was a lot of fun.
A friend of the show, friend of yours, Kevin Keogh, Bar Keogh, who was with you forever.
He was my partner at Beauty Shop.
At Beauty Shop here. So he was. So when I moved, I went to Automatic Slims in New York before I even considered moving here. I met a Memphis girl. We were dating, and somebody said, "Oh, there's this Memphis restaurant." So I was at the New York one back, and this was in the mid '90s, whatever. And
were they dancing on the bar at midnight?
I do not believe I was dancing on the bar at midnight. I don't think so. I was pretending I was very mature and adult. I was in grad school or something like that. I had a day job and wore a suit. So in publishing, I wore a suit, which is very
that
fun.
is the smallest bar you'll ever go into. Yeah. 3 tables and 16 seats at the bar. That's the beauty of it.
So Kevin has a great story that I made him tell when he came on the show one time. And about so you opened Automatic Slims in Memphis, downtown in what?
In 91.
91. So so I guess
and
I
he
moved
was
here.
working there.
And he was working there. And at that time, there was Peabody. And there was
nothing.
you and you and Peabody,
That's
right? I mean, right across the street.
I wanted to be somewhere where people were walking. I came back from New York and I was like, I opened up another Red Side Attraction catering. And 5 years later, I started looking for a restaurant space downtown. I wanted to, because, my family were like, oh, come east, Karen. I don't want to be in a strip mall. I need to see people walking. And so that's why I chose to go downtown. I was looking at some of Henry Turley's stuff down on the south end, really, an old pool hall that almost opened up. Back then, nothing was there. And they were like, don't do that. And I was like, all right. So anyway, Lyman Aldridge had this building, and across from the Peabody, I went, sold. That's it. That's where I want to be.
And I should do a quick footnote on it. There is an Automatic Slims down in that same place that you sold that.
I
over
sold
a
that in
decade
2008.
ago. Yeah, okay.
I have nothing to do with it.
Yeah, okay.
Please.
So Kevin's story about the memories of when you guys first opened is one night he's there. Saw these people, and your New York partner was in town.
David Zinzer,
Yeah, and he said, it's packed, and he would have these reggae band playing, and then they would always take a break. And he would often go down the street to the Russian, whatever the Russian place was called.
Oh, yeah.
They'd get the belly dancers to come in. So
Samovar.
So he'd slip them $50 or whatever to keep things going. So the belly dancers goes in. Kevin goes outside. He's looking over the Peabody, smoking a cigarette. And he sees all these guys coming out of the Peabody in full Scottish bagpipe regalia. And he sees one guy as a buddy of his. And he goes, hey, I don't know the guy's name.
Come
John,
on in.
John. He goes, come on in.
Yeah.
So then the belly dancers go out. The bagpipes come in, do a full thing, and then the reggae band starts up again.
I'm going to tell you, that's the way it was. I booked the Coolers. It was the Coolers band was made up of all the Stax studio musicians. Okay, Stax had closed in 73, but this was Bobby Manuel, Gary John. Everybody was in that band. It was amazing. Duck Dunn was the bass player for the band, and they played every Saturday night. So we do a love train, and we go out the door into the Peabody, around the Peabody lobby, back across the street, back into Slim's, and the whole restaurant. So you have to understand Slim's. My thing was, I was brought up here in the 60s, okay? Well, sort of part of the 50s.
Yeah.
And
details.
And you have to realize that I grew up going to every Goodwill Review, learned how to dance to James Brown at the Old Coliseum, at the Goodwill Review, would sneak into Club Paradise to hear Howlin' Wolf. It was a time, and everybody, Sam and Dave, would play our high school dances. I mean, it was wild. So music was massive. It was just part of my whole DNA, basically. And even at Slim's in New York, as little as it was, we would have bands in there.
Yeah.
And so the Elusive Souls, they played all Memphis music. And when I went to James Beard, they played in James Beard. They had never had a band in there. They were like, "Karen, what are you doing?" I went, "No, man, we got to have some music."
Yeah.
It was James Beard for us from Slim's and Cielo back then,
Cielo,
And they were like, "You got to call off your friends. The members can't get in here. You got to cut back." And we were like, "No, man, this is my New York friends. They're coming."
Yeah.
And so music was so much a part of me. And I think so what would happen at Slim's at 11 o'clock, we would turn into a bar, a music club. And it was 10 deep at the bar. Yeah. So it'd be crazy during dinner, but then it was crazy till 3 in the morning.
Well, we'll take a break. But one thing that was funny, and I say this to everybody, so I'm not just being nice to you, that moving from New York to Memphis, which I loved, and it's now 30 years, I've loved being here. Automatic Slims was like part of, I can make this work. Because there's there's great food, interesting food, cool place.
Thank you.
I see it. I'm starting to see Memphis now. Because the first times I was here, there was a lot of sort of country club stuff. There was a lot of that kind of thing, which exists in lots of places. And I was like, yeah, it's all fine and really nice people, but I don't want to live there. And Automatic Slims was one of those places.
Carol Coletta really, she would tell me that a lot, because her thing was what makes a city alive?
Yeah.
Why do people want to move to a city?
Yeah.
And she actually had a lot to do with me coming back.
Yeah. Yeah.
And me starting a business.
Let me do, we're here with Karen Carrier of Beauty Shop, of Another Roadside Attraction, of, what else? Molly, what am I leaving?
Molly Fontaine Lounge, Bar DKDC.
Bar DKDC. But also we're here talking, she's a graduate of the College of Art, and we'll talk more about that as well. But let me take a moment and remind everyone, I am Eric Barnes. This is The Sidebar. It airs here on WYXR 91.7 every Thursday at 11:30, focused on the community, arts, culture, everything in between. It's not just a radio show, though. It's one of many podcasts we do at the Daily Memphian, including our morning podcast, the AM DM, with Mary Casciola and Natalie Van Gundy, our producer sitting next to me, as well as many voices from the staff of the Daily Memphian. We also have our Memphis Grizzlies podcast with Chris Harrington and Drew Hill, and our food podcast, Soundbites, with Holly Whitfield. Soundbites also airs on WYXR every Thursday at 11, right before the sidebar. I should also mention we produce the podcast version of Behind the Headlines, the TV show we produce every week with the folks at WKNO. All of our podcasts on the Daily Memphian site, as well as iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get the WYXR shows at WYXR.org or download the WYXR app. It includes all the shows, both talk and music, archives of past shows. Great way to keep up with what's going on with WYXR. Also, consider becoming a supporter of WYXR if you're not already. It's nonprofit listener-supported radio. You can become a member. You can do a one-off donation, all on the web or on the app. And if you're not a paid subscriber to the Daily Memphian, do consider becoming one. Paid subscriptions help pay for the largest newsroom in the Memphis area. And then we also have advertising, and we also are a nonprofit and do donations and fundraising support. Recently, we recently had Ramona Sonnen from Memphis Fashion Week. We had folks from the ballet, folks from Girls Inc. On Behind the Headlines, coming up this week, we've got a show focused on affordable housing, and have recently had Memphis Mayor Paul Young, as well as U.S. Attorney Mike Donovan. But we are still here with Karen Carrier talking. What else about? I mean, you're doing these dinners. Let's do that. Let's make sure we talk about the dinners, because people can come to these dinners.
Absolutely.
If they go to They go to Brooks, search for Legacy at the Table.
Absolutely.
Is the name of the program.
Right.
There's one coming up May 20th and one June 24. Mm-hmm. What's the premise? And you've done one already, I think, right?
No, we haven't.
Okay, I missed that. Okay.
We were supposed to have one actually last Wednesday, and they had come right off Barrel to Barrel, which was their big fundraiser. And I think that it was hopeful or whatever, but I think that it was probably better that
sure.
didn't happen.
Sure.
I got to go to the New Orleans Jazz Fest because
there you go. See, there's
so
karma.
That actually,
good karma.
it was very good karma for me. We were like, "Woof, that's good."
So coming up May 20th, Legacy at the Table.
May 20th, yes. So they wanted to do 3 dinners. Basically, they're based around the history of the Art Academy. I guess the times, what was happening during those times. So the first dinner they were like, Karen, we really want you to design this one. This is going to have to do with Dorothy Sturm, which Dorothy and Burton Callicotte were one of the first professors there back from the 50s, even the 40s, actually, whenever it started on Adams Avenue, which is funny because I lived on Adams Avenue. So it was all based on that. And then the second one was based on the Rust Hall years, and Ted Rust, when he ran it. When I was there, he was running it, and he retired. And then Jameson, he went on to become the head guy. And I think it was, that's what they wanted me to focus on, was the food of that time, or the food. And I said, well, I can't focus on the food of Dorothy Sturm because she ate a lot of pâté. And I don't think we're going to be selling a lot of pâté that night. So I'm just going to. So my thing was, it's all family style dinners, which I love, because basically that's where you interact with people you don't know. You pass a plate. Can you give you some of this? Oh, what's your name? Oh, how did you get here? What was your history? And I love that, because what is food at a table? That's basically, that's what it's about. And so I think my thing was I had done a book on Dorothy Sturm called Cobalt, which I brought here today. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about her.
Please.
I'm going to read this. Dorothy Sturm was not just my mentor. She became a very close friend of mine. She was my guide into the world of composition, color, texture, form, mixed media, and the philosophy of life. For those of you who never had the chance to experience her being, her prominent presence, her walk, her long brown cigarette always dangling from the corner niche of her mouth, her nicotine-stained yellow hair, her bulky shoes, and, of course, her grand stories of her days in New York during the abstract expressionist years. Exhibiting at the Betty Parsons Gallery alongside Pollock, Barnett Newman, William de Kooning, I can only say, I'm sorry. She was a force to be reckoned with. The thing about Dorothy was most people were scared of her. I was too young and too enamored to be scared of her. So I was like a puppy dog around her. She taught me really composition. She would make me go into the library, take the photographs, and get some tracing paper of, Cezanne, Velasquez, and just draw the shapes and the compositions. She would always say, Karen, you have 4 lines to start. Whether you're a painter or you have a piece of copper for enameling or you're drawing, your 4 lines are already there. So you have to learn juxtaposition of shape, color, composition, and it clicked. You know, it took a while and then it clicked. My food is the same thing. And I think one of the things that, and I go back to this because one of the things I believe that Brooks really understood was, where did the people that came out of the Art Academy, where are they now? What did they do? How did they take their art, and what realm did they take it to? Are they still doing it? And for me, it became food art. You know, it became the art, the cuisine, the composition, the color. And think about food now. Food in the 60s and 70s was not near as big as it became in the 80s. Yeah. And then all the food shows and all the stuff that started happening.
Yeah. Talking about food, I mean, Beauty Shop, I am a regular at Beauty Shop and have been since it opened, really. Yeah. And I say this all the time, so I'm not just going out of my way to say this to you. It's remarkable how the Beauty Shop has evolved, but it's still the Beauty Shop. And that's a trick, because there are lots of restaurants everywhere that do the same thing. There are restaurants I go back to in New York from when I lived there that are exactly the same. Exactly. And that's fine. I'm not criticizing that. Every meal or everything you order or every change in whether it's the appetizers or the wine, or I'm not as much of a cocktail person, but my girlfriend is, it still feels like the Beauty Shop. And then there's some old standards, but then there's these new things, and then things come and go. Is that sort of very, very intentional, plotted out, or that's just how you approach it?
That is intentional.
Yeah.
I think really, Eric, if you rest on your laurels, you're toast.
Yeah.
And that is what happens when people, we're going to be 25 years in 2027, which is insane. Wow. But my thing is the beauty of the beauty of the Beauty Shop is that the interior has withstood the test of time.
Definitely.
And, it was an old beauty salon from the 1940s. And it's where Priscilla used to come get her beehives done when she was 16. Yeah. But the deal is, I believe that it was the only restaurant that I've ever done that's really neutral. The food was the color.
Oh.
That was how I wanted it. If you looked at Slim's.
I love that for you, that's neutral. The Beauty Shop. Because I bring people in the Beauty Shop, they're like, oh my God, this place is amazing.
I know,
but for you,
it's neutral. Yeah. At Slim's was mango walls and, copper leaf tables. And, it was different. And it smacked you in the face. Yeah. But I wanted that. I wanted the food to be the color. I wanted the plates to be the composition. And that's how I changed it. And I do believe that you have to leave some things on there. People get upset.
Sure.
Well, I tried to take coconut mango shrimp off at Slim's back in the day, and it was like
riots.
A freaking riot back there. I was like, oh my God. And I learned from that. I was like, oh, okay. They come here for certain things, but you have to keep changing. And for me, that's traveling. That's going, wherever. California, New Orleans, New York. I don't care if I go down to Mississippi. It's just, you've got to change. You got to go to Europe. You have to read books, and you have to see what's going on in the world, and you have to stay on that cutting edge, or your history.
Yeah.
And I just believe that for me, my staff has been with me, some of them 40 years, 37.
It's amazing.
No,
it's truly amazing.
It's wonderful. And Cindy's from Vietnam. Her food influenced me greatly. Lena, who's now working, at West Clinic. Well, I'm really proud of her, but she was with me for 23 years. She's from Bangkok. So those people's food. And then if you think about the people you learn from, I call them the ghost of our past.
Yeah.
Whether it's your mother, your mentor, your best friend, those are the people. That's what a cook does. They learn from that. You can hear people go, oh, I stood side by side with my grandmother. You hear all that, but it's true. Or you can be Susanna Trilling, who passed away. She was my mentor in New York City. She died from ALS. She has a cooking school in Oaxaca called Seasons of My Heart. Her son's running it now. It's amazing. Anthony Bourdain went there. Everybody's been there. It's in the heart of Oaxaca. Well, right outside Oaxaca and Puebla. But she was like Dorothy Sturm to me. She took me under her wing, and man, it was just phenomenal.
Yeah.
And we just, we rode the wave.
Yeah.
We rode, the Cajun wave in New York. We rode the Southwestern Mexican wave, and she was partially from Mexico, via Philadelphia, came from Austin, Texas to New York. I came from Memphis. So our nicknames were Trixie and Dixie in Manhattan. But no, I think that what you said is true. And that's funny you said that. And I'm glad you noticed that because I really that's very important to me.
Yeah. And the people, you notice that in restaurants everywhere, but in Memphis, you notice when there are people, restaurants that are constantly changing. I mean, constantly changing. You're kind of like, I don't know, that maybe that's not the greatest place to work back there.
Well,
and then there are places like your place, and there are others where people have been there for decades.
I think for me, the changing in a kitchen is not good because it affects the quality of your food.
Yeah.
And so my thing is, Susanna taught me that you always want to treat your staff the way you would want to be treated.
Yeah.
And that has stuck with me forever. And I'm a firm believer in that.
Yeah.
I'm just a firm believer.
We do a whole show on this, but just we're sort of kind of, I was thinking about it because I was with family recently. We were talking a lot about COVID and when we got together the first time, when we thought COVID was over, but it was really just winding down and all that. Things that are different still, 5 years from shots, whatever marker you want to say, things that are still different, that didn't go back to normal pre-COVID.
You know, for us, we were lucky. We didn't, we stayed open.
Yeah.
I mean, me and Shay and Dana worked 6 nights a week and Sundays doing to-go orders. And then Shay Grauer was up front with Scott Taylor, answering the phone and taking the food to the cars. We didn't deliver, but we did that. And it was exhausting because everybody got their $800 or whatever and stayed home. And then when the PPP came out, I would say, hey guys, do y'all want to come back? I'll pay you what you're getting paid till that is over in August, but you'll have your job and it'll keep going. And they all came back except one person. We got lucky. And then you have to realize I had DK, I had Outback, and then I had the front. So I could spread out. And then I started with, the greenhouses and the igloos and all that stuff. And we were able to see a lot of people, So as far as how it's, I don't find that it's different. The one thing that's different is people are eating earlier.
Oh,
where we would have a packed house at, reservations at 9:30 and stay up until 11. People are like, by freaking 8:30, man. It's done. You're like, what is happening?
Yeah.
They really started coming out earlier.
Yeah.
And that happened after COVID.
And I see that in other cities, and we're almost out of time. But
it happened in New York too.
Yeah, it's really, you think people, I was in Memphis. No, that was actually, I mean, I go to Portland a lot, family, Seattle, all these places, there was this big shift of that. It's
Absolutely.
Really interesting.
Even the music clubs. They were all in New York. You have to be done by 12 o'clock. You're like, what the heck?
Yeah.
We weren't even going out till 12.
We were at a place, this beautiful place, Foreign Cinema in San Francisco for dinner this weekend with family and so on. I mean, 8:30. I watched this woman close the door behind us and lock it. 8:30 in San Francisco.
That's what I'm saying. The big cities are doing it.
Karen Carrier, thanks so much.
A pleasure.
People can go, again, it's called Legacy at the Table. Search for it on Google or search for it on the Brooks site. They can get tickets, to the dinners that you'll be putting on with the Brooks. And again, people should check out the Memphis College of Art, 1936 to 2020, an enduring legacy, the exhibit that's going on right now. But thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. I loved it.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
And if you missed any of the show today, you can get the full episode online at Daily Memphian, at WYXR, or wherever you get your podcasts.